The previous episode ended with Jacob's reconciliation with his twin brother Esau after 20 long years. Now we will see how Jacob settles his family in the land of Canaan. But the tragic event that happens in Canaan will bring him face to face with his deepest fears. When Jacob returned from his journey to Padan Aram, he went to settle among the people of Canaan in the region called Sukkoth, where he pitched his tent near Shechem in the fertile valley of Heifer. This is the same Shechem where Joseph's bones had been preserved by the Pharaoh's butler Potiphar after being thrown into prison. It was a beautiful valley surrounded by mountains. The main city in the valley was called Shechem, which was ruled by a man named Hamor. And one day, Jacob's youngest daughter, Dinah, went to visit the women of the area, and it was there that she met Shechem, Hamor's son. Now, we don't know exactly what happened, but the Bible tells us that Shechem dishonored her. Genesis chapter 34, verse 2 tells us, "And while Dinah was gathering sticks for the hearth, Shechem, Shem, son of Canaan, Hamor's son, came upon her and fell upon her and lay with her roughly. And Shechem hated her when he had done so because he despised her and he sent her away." You can imagine how shameful this experience must have been for Dinah, how heartbroken her mother Leah must have felt, and how angry Jacob and his sons must have been. But interestingly, 4 days later, Shechem comes back to Dinah's family and proposes to marry her, saying, "My father Hamor and my brother Shechem will treat you properly. Please give me this woman as a wife." And Shechem and his father Hamor were prepared to do whatever it took to make this happen. Verse 15 says, "So it was that on the 3rd day, when they were sore, that 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, heard of this. Then Simeon and Levi, Jacob's sons, each took a sword in their hand and came upon the city unawares and slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword." It seems that Hamor and Shechem thought that by marrying Dinah, they would bring their 2 families together. So why did Simeon and Levi react so violently? To understand their reaction, we need to look at the next part of the verse, where it says, "They bespattered the bed with the blood of the slain, and took vengeance on them for their sister Dinah, because he had violated her." From this, we understand that the motive behind their attack was revenge. They wanted to take revenge on the men of Shechem for what they had done to their sister. But wait a minute. Earlier in the text, it was said that Shechem loved Dinah and wanted to marry her. So what was the problem here? Well, according to the Jewish tradition, the first time Shechem proposed to marry Dinah, he had already deflowered her, even though Dinah didn't agree to the marriage. However, according to another interpretation, Shechem didn't know Dinah before he went to her house to propose to her. And in this case, the problem was not that Shechem had treated Dinah badly, but rather that he and his father Hamor were Canaanites, people of a different religion. Then Hamor and Shechem approached Jacob to talk about the possibility of the 2 families becoming one. They said, "Your father has made us welcome, and we are all well pleased. Give us your daughters to wives, and let us take your sons, that we may be united in kindred and become one people. And let a man of yours circumcise some of his sons, that I may take a son-in-law from among them for my daughter." Now, if Hamor and Shechem were sincere in their desire to unite with Jacob's family, why did they want to circumcise some of Jacob's sons? Well, this was a Canaanite ritual that marked a person's entry into a covenant relationship. So if Jacob's sons wanted to be accepted as part of their community, they had to submit to circumcision. But unfortunately, Simeon and Levi understood the request differently. They thought that Hamor and Shechem wanted to humiliate them and force them to submit to the religion of Canaan, so they tricked them by agreeing to the proposal. Verse 25 says, "And it came to pass on the 3rd day, when they were in great pain, that those of the city came in to see them, and were astonished that they were circumcised. And they said to them, 'What is the reason that you have done this thing?' So they said to them, 'Because a man of the old, his daughter, we took for our son, And this is a part of the custom that we have in our country, that all who are born in our land, when they enter into a house of marriage, be circumcised. And it came to pass that their hurt was very great on the third day. And they said to them on the third day, These men are able to come forth from under the covering, but on the fourth day they shall die. So now you must cut off every male child from the gate of your little ones who are uncircumcised from under the covering. If you keep this cutting, you shall live in the midst of them. If you do not cut, every male child shall be slain from the gate of your little ones. On the third day, the men were recovering from the circumcision, but they couldn't realize that they were being tricked until the fourth day when they heard these words. In fact, it wasn't just the men of Shamgar who were deceived, but also Jacob and his other sons. Only Shem and Leah knew what was going on. They realized what Simeon and Levi were planning and tried to warn Jacob and the others. At that moment, Jacob received a message from God, and God asked him why he allowed his sons to behave in this way. God told him that his sons were bringing him into disgrace among the Canaanites. Jacob responded by blaming Hamor and Shechem for violating his daughter. Then God said to Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. This was where God first appeared to Jacob after he fled from his brother Esau, and where Jacob made a vow to God that if God would be with him and protect him, then God would be his God. So God was asking Jacob to return to the place where their relationship began. Jacob did as God told him, and he warned his sons that they should not marry Canaanite women or bow down to any god except Yahweh. He also told them to get rid of all the idols and teraphim that they had taken from Padan Aram. After reaching Bethel, he rebuilt the altar that he had built before and worshipped God, and God promised to bless Jacob and his descendants and protect them as he had promised before. This was the renewal of the covenant that God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and God repeated the promise that Jacob would be called by a new name, Israel. As Jacob and his family left Bethel and moved to a nearby village, a terrible tragedy struck. Rachel became pregnant and went into hard labor. The firstborn son was born safely, but after a while, Rachel started having contractions again, and it seemed that she would have another baby. In the Jewish tradition, it was believed that twins always arrived first with the boy coming before the girl. So when the second baby was born, it was a boy, but he was weak and could not cry. According to the belief of that time, this meant that the baby wouldn't survive. So Jacob named him Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. But later, Rachel changed the name to Benjamin, which means son of the right hand. Unfortunately, Rachel didn't survive the childbirth. Jacob buried her on the road to Bethlehem and raised a stone over her tomb. Meanwhile, back in Canaan, Isaac was 180 years old, and when he learned that his son Jacob was back in Canaan, he summoned him and told him to take care of him in his old age. Sometime later, Isaac died, and Esau and Jacob came together to bury their father in Mamre. They were still rivals, and this time they weren't trying to reconcile. It seems that after reconciling with his brother Esau, Jacob felt much lighter, and his life was going well. He had his family with him. His business was growing, and God had blessed him with many children. However, the traumatic experience with Shechem caused him to live in constant fear of his neighbors. So when God told him to move to Bethel, he did so without hesitation. God had already shown him that he could trust him and protect him from harm. And indeed, when a deadly trap was set for his sons, he knew that it was God who prevented them from being completely wiped out. God had helped him escape from Laban, from the anger of his brother Esau, and from the trap of the men of Shechem. He had kept his word and protected Jacob. And so Jacob's life was filled with ups and downs, family conflict, tragedy, loss, and yet the continued faithfulness of God who guided him through it all.